return on the back end with the transfer of the property. So that's that. The utility, the stormwater utility rate study, we have an agreed upon contract that John's looked at, their attorneys have looked at. I'll be bringing it back to council for approval, and we can move into that process. And as I promised, as part of the vacant and distressed building ordinance, we're starting to enforce that. And one of the first projects out of the gate is a well-known property in need of abatement at 211 High Street. And that's underway.
Great, thank you.
Todd, in terms of the Crystal Geyser property, the location that you are talking to the new owner about for the water tank, is that a different location than the lot or the parcel that the Park District traded to the city for a potential water tank site?
Are you talking about up near Spring Hill?
Right.
Yeah, it is, but where we need that landing for that tank, the majority of that property is owned by the Crystal Geyser folks.
Okay, right. Okay.
Part of it, and part of it's the city's.
Okay, and then various people have asked me whether there's still going to be the Spring Hill Trail, if that's going to be an open to the public trail as it has been.
That issue is broached, along with a whole bunch of other things. I plan to make that, part of the process, and there was no pushback on that, because essentially the grades out there aren't really usable. So it's in their best interest. They want to be good stewards. They want to be part of the community, and they clearly want to see highest and best use. And I think there's, because we have, different needs, but they're not mutually exclusive. I think we can get there.
And then switching subjects to the thinning on the Roseburg property or the landing, will any of that, or could any of that timber be made available for this winter for senior citizens or for low-income individuals? I
can ask. So when I walked that site, that down timber, which is, I just learned this myself, are referred to as snags. And they're usually old, crumbling trees. Some of them have pest control issues. They're not the kind of things that necessarily you'd want in your fireplace. Mm-hmm. The trick becomes, the majority of it is brush, stuff left behind by transients, larger trees that need to be removed. And, again, the biggest thing is the snags. Once a snag goes up, you can't touch it for a while, to fight a fire if it goes off. I can put it to our fire chief. Given the load of work out there, I don't know if they've got the manpower to separate the few, timbers out there that may be worthwhile for kindling, for wood, for the fire, because a lot of it is just garbage. But I can ask.
Okay, and to the extent that manpower might be necessary, we've used, what's it called,
Deadwood crews?
Right.
We have. The deadwood crews have been reduced to, I believe it's a quarter of what we've seen in the past. Right. And so that's part of what we're running into and why we're worried for this year more than we have been in, more than we have worried in years past.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for all the updates, Todd. You've covered everything I wanted to hear about, with the possible exception of how we're doing with the safety consolidation, safety services consolidation RFP.
So, part of getting this rolling is where do you post this? Because it's such an oddball RFP. And I got great information from the suddenly resigned city manager in Chico, Mark Orm, that there's a clearinghouse for RFPs for all public contracts. And it's up there. I haven't seen any responses yet. What I might do is, if I haven't, I'll check tomorrow to see if anything's come in. If things have not come in, I know of at least 2 companies. One of them's in the Midwest, one of them is here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send the RFP directly to the companies that I can find online.
Then let's move on to committee updates. Are there any today, Todd? Thank you. Well, then we'll move on to the consent agenda. The city manager recommends approval of the following consent agenda items. All resolutions and ordinances on this agenda or added hereto shall be introduced or adopted as applicable by title only, and the full reading thereof is hereby waived. A, approval of minutes, April 11th, 2022, regular city council meeting. B, approval of disbursements, accounts payable April 8th and April 18th, 2022. Total gross payroll and taxes for the period ending April 3rd, 2022. C is committee minutes, March 9th, 2022, beautification committee minutes. And D, monthly investment report for March 2022. And E is the Interceptor Sewer Replacement Project Bid Award. First of all, councilors, anything you like to consider separately on this list?
Not I. Okay. Motion? Okay. Move to approve consent agenda items A through E by title only.
Is there a second?
That has a award also.
I have no problem with the award being part of the consent
Resolution
agenda.
number CCR 22-10. I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to agenda item number 8, the first reading of CCO-22- did you hear 10? No.
No number till this is.
No number.
goes to
Oh,
the second
that's
reading.
right. Adding chapter 2.80 to the Mount Shasta Municipal Code regarding police acquisition and the use of military equipment. Chief Gibson, would you introduce this to us?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Again, this was before council in the previous meetings where it was brought up that they wanted added language. That language has been added under section 2.80.060, which is reports of the use of military equipment, under section F, which states that all military equipment requested after January 1st, 2022 shall have city council approval prior to acquiring by Mount Shasta Police Department, with the following exception, which is 1, exigent circumstances as detailed in section 2.80.050 of this code. Basically what that does is that means that any type of acquisition going forward must have your approval prior to it coming into the city. I believe that was what was requested by council. Oh, and I'll add that there were no other changes made in the ordinance except for that.
Any questions, councilors? Let's open it up for public comment. We have nobody in the audience left, so anybody online, Kathy?
If there are any members of our Zoom audience that would like to speak during public comment on this item, please raise your hand now. There's no hands raised.
Let's bring it back to council for any discussion or Concerns?
I would move this to a second reading. And to be clear, to clarify, move that ordinance of the city of Mount Shasta, adding new chapter 2.80 to the Mount Shasta Municipal Code regarding policy acquisition and use of military equipment by title only, be moved to a second reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Agenda item number 9 is review and approve Plan West Partners, Inc. Contract for professional services for the City of Mount Shasta, 6th cycle housing element. City Planner Teresa Spade, would you please introduce this to us?
So our 6th cycle housing element update is due. There is a deadline by the State Housing and Community Development Department, which is it's basically in spring of 2023 that we have to have it completely done and certified. We had SB2 funding money, a revision done to our SB2 grant in order to cover this, and this went before you for approval some months back. And since that time, I have written the request for proposals for the housing element update. We ran it for a month. We received 3 proposals. We reviewed the proposals and found that the Plan West proposal was the best fit for the city of Mount Shasta. They will be using just a little bit under $80,000 of the SB2 grant money to facilitate the housing element update. It leaves about $10,000 in the SB2 grant budget for if there's any needed contract changes, for the amount of staff time that the SB2 grant will cover. So we do have a little bit extra left over for those things. And yep, that's probably about it. And Mayor Collings had suggested that I talk briefly about the CEQA associated with the housing element update. And the CEQA process has significantly changed from what was expected to occur for the housing element update prior to this. And there's a couple of reasons for that. So the prior planner had expected that the housing element update was going to require a full EIR, which is a much longer and more expensive CEQA process than an exemption. And what we're suggesting now is that an exemption is all that is going to be required. It is a big difference, and one of the reasons that we shifted to the process that we shifted was because we did not have time to do the type of effort that the past planner was planning on doing. So the exemption is allowable because we're not proposing any incredibly significant changes in terms of housing. And for that reason, we're hoping that we can rely on a past EIR for the housing element and call this one an exemption. One of the other things that changed significantly is that the state gives each jurisdiction a certain number of residential units that we need to meet within that housing element update time period. And during our last housing element update, we had a very large number. In fact, most jurisdictions in Siskiyou County had a much larger number than this time around. We were given our new RHNA number right around December, I believe, of 2021, and that number is now 2. So it is a lot smaller. We don't have the same significant change that needs to be addressed in our housing element. And so for that reason, there is an assumption and a hope that we can use a CEQA exemption at this time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any questions?
Yes, thank you. So Teresa, if I understand correctly, this really is an update rather than a imagination.
Whole revamp.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. So
And what's the expected timeframe for their completion?
they are, the timeline that they set shows the completion in February of 2023. It was January or February, but it's going to be before the deadline.
All right, so that's basically, they'll finish it in adequate time for us to send it to the governor's office.
Yeah.
I would add that there is one rub in that Peter, the representative from HCD, who's in charge of funding, has been non-responsive, and the money should have gotten out the door quite a while ago, and a number of us in the county have been working him, and we're to the point that if he doesn't get back after a very terse email from several of us responding to us on when the money is flowing, given that he's holding everybody up, that we're going to go to the director and press for this funding to be released, because you can't expect that you are going to drag out when the funding is going to be available and still meet our deadlines. So that's just something that's kind of percolating in the background.
All right, one more question for either one of you. Normally when there's a housing element update, you have to designate what areas are for residential. Currently, we haven't designated the landing for that, any part of the landing, but I assume that will be part of this housing update. Is that correct?
It's not quite correct. It will and can be incorporated in the update in terms of looking towards the future. The landing update in and of itself is going to require a separate effort just because of the way that the landing development was approved in the past. Revising that type of a development isn't something that happens through the housing element update necessarily, but the housing element update should reflect that there are some revisions. So, I mean, yes and no, it can be done in tandem, but there's another process that will specifically change the landing to allow for housing.
Well, is that something that we can do within, say, the next 5 or 6 months, so that gets incorporated into whatever?
Yes, yes, that I think that is something that we can and should do in tandem.
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm fine.
We have no members in the audience. Catherine, is there anybody online who'd like to have some public comment?
Yes, our first speaker will be Peggy Risch.
Hi, Peggy.
Thank you for this opportunity to comment on a distant format here. So I'd just like to make a comment about the staff report as it relates to the CEQA documentation, and it describes a moratorium for this as being an exemption. I think the language there is not that this is a moratorium, so I think just want to draw that to your attention. Second of all, as I'm familiar with, housing elements have in the past required an EIR. And I'm just wondering, and I'm hoping that this is more of an update, especially since the regional housing needs assessment is only 2, as our city planner mentions. That shouldn't require a lot of rezoning. But my question would be to the city planner, does she foresee any massive or even slight rezoning happening in this housing element that might be necessary in her opinion right now? Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Kathy, anybody else?
We don't have any other hands raised.
Let's bring it back to council. Any discussion on this, councilors?
Not unless city planner wants to answer Peggy's question there at the end.
I think we kind of covered that, didn't we?
Yeah, she kind of did.
I feel like we did.
Yeah.
There won't be any massive changes.
Right. Anybody else? Your motion?
Yep. All right, so I'm going to move to approve contract for professional services from Plan West Partners, Inc. to prepare the city of Mount Shasta for the sixth cycle housing element, I guess by title only, and this is not written in resolution form, so there you have the motion.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next agenda item is reports on outside meetings. It says none, but we did have one. We went to a Lola meeting. The quick headline for we had a Lola meeting up in Montague week ago, 2 weeks ago, somewhere there. It was nice being able to get together and have people show up. I covered the current activities that are going on in the city, and we had a long speech by our district attorney, Kirk Andrus, about the difficulties that unfolding legal positions over the last 5 years have constrained him in his ability to prosecute various categories of problems that he has been experiencing, and that they want to prosecute. It was a long and somewhat difficult speech to listen to, but on balance, the cities are, at least as reported by the other cities when they gave their quick summary, we're doing well. This is my first Lola meeting in a couple of years, so it's things are doing better than I expected. Tim, anything to add?
Only that there were various city managers and city clerks there.
Yeah.
So the next meeting will be in 3 months.
Here, no. Where is it? I don't remember.
I think we're not up for 3 months from now, I don't think.
Well,
I think
we'll
we're up
find
for
out.
the
We'll
one
all
after
get
that.
notified when it becomes clear. Moving on to future agenda items. Councilors, anything to add or subtract?
There's an item that I would like to put on future agenda for discussion and possible action. I'd like us to consider adopting an ordinance along the lines of the ordinance that Los Gatos has for basically a 20% permanently affordable housing for any projects that are 5 or more units. I gave a copy of that ordinance both to the mayor and also the city manager. And I think it merits future discussion.
Okay, so I'll second that.
And city planner, I've got a document that I'll forward to you that's the 27 pages of how they do this.
Is this like a density bonus ordinance? Is that what it is?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's any development of
okay.
5 units or more, 20% must be affordable.
Oh, okay, so 20%. All right.
And Teresa,
Yeah.
I can't remember if, I think I may have given you a copy to give to the city manager. I don't recall. But certainly we can.
Just out of curiosity, Tim, does Los Gatos or any city that does such a thing passes an ordinance and then actually has projects where they follow through? Do they receive some sort of help from the state regarding grants or whatever?
I haven't made any contact with Los Gatos myself. I suggested earlier today that perhaps our mayor could contact the mayor of Los Gatos, or perhaps city manager could contact the city manager of Los Gatos.
I can, and it's something that we need to take a look at. My concern with what I read is, given how hard it is to get affordable housing to pencil, that in some cases we may be losing prospective development in certain cases because they can't get a project to pencil.
Yeah. I would absolutely agree with that. And then the other thing I wanted to add to that too was that the Planning Commission has already requested that we incorporate the state density bonus law requirements in our code, which will be also helpful because that incentivizes people to consider it where it's feasible, and then it's somewhere where where it's more visible.
Well,
And so here's an example of a situation where that 20% rule might be difficult. So I have been talking to a person who's looking at purchasing a property. It's actually 2 parcels that are right next to each other. And they're looking at triplexes. So they're looking at 2, I believe it's a triplex possibly on each lot, or maybe it was a duplex and a triplex. But in any case, that might be enough houses to kick in that 20% rule. And as it is, they're kind of looking at the numbers to see the feasibility of the build. And they want to build something high quality. They want to build something that's going to last, And so when additional requirements like this come up, it has the potential to take a development like that off the table.
Well, we can discuss it when it comes before council.
Yeah.
I think there can be incentives built in to that sort of, so you don't only have a carrot, but you also have not only have a stick, but you have a carrot.
Yeah, we've got our marching orders in terms of bringing at least a summary of the Los Gatos ordinance and what it would look like here. What I would, again, getting back to the point, and it's something that we can discuss at council, is we have a number, the Carmen Drive project that's taking advantage of the state density bonus affordable project going in, and we have another, we've got several prospectors out there that are looking to do specifically affordable housing. It may be an exercise in passing an ordinance that we're already on the path to achieving the goals of affordable housing without any additional regulation. But we'll bring it back.
Yeah, so that's a good point too. And we also have that 25-unit development that is, we expect to get an application in within the next month or so for that one. So we've got, and that one has got some affordable housing.
That's the
as well.
Danco project?
What's
Yeah.
that?
Danco project?
The Danco project, yeah, and then we've got, the, what is it?
Rural community housing development.
Three or four fourplexes over on Carmen.
Yeah.
Yeah, City Manager, there's a number of facets in affordable housing, and I don't know where in your priorities, given how much you've got on your plate, when it's time to turn a more comprehensive focus on affordable housing and lots of different alternatives.
I'm fully in the mix on affordable housing right now.
Okay, yeah. Well, okay, it's on. Anything else? Then, folks, we're adjourned.
What time does the Mount Shasta Super close? Am I too late?
I have no idea.